На Чернобыльской атомной электростанции произошла авария.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union.
There are conflicting reports coming out of the Soviet Union.
Принимаются меры по ликвидации последствий аварии.
We do know that a zone of deadly radiation is being released from the damaged plant.
The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
Immediately following the meltdown of the USSR nuclear reactor at Chernobyl in 1986, the world became aware of the responsibilities of nuclear power, mainly due to the dangerous radiation posed to human health. The rights of the media and people affected by the radiation were violated by the Soviet Russian government. The government had not put in place proper safety precautions or evacuation measures in case of a nuclear meltdown, and this violated the rights of the aforementioned party of individuals in regard to their health and welfare. The rights of the press were also violated as the Soviet government refused to allow media coverage of the event until days afterwards. The nuclear disaster at Chernobyl was the worst of its kind and was handled with negligence and without proper containment. Because of this, it made a lasting impact on the people and groups it affected.
Was one of the first RBMK type reactors ever built. The RBMK nuclear fission reactor was notorious for mishaps, but ignoring the safety concerns, the USSR continued to use the same design, powering over 6.5% of the USSR. The Chernobyl disaster began as they tested a new method of power regulation for the plant. During this, the operators shut off the main generators and handed off the power production to the emergency diesel generators. However, between the turbine being turned off and the generators reaching full strength, bubbles formed in the cooling stream, and the water around the bubbles vaporized instantly. The steam caused high pressures throughout the reactor core due to the integrated reactor design, and registering this pressure increase, the plant operators began to shut down the reactors. However, unknown to the workers, there was a design flaw known as the positive scrum effect, which meant that due to the liquid cooling system, it took too long to insert the control rods into the reactor. The reactor, without proper cooling, quickly jumped to dangerously high temperatures. The extreme heat reacted with the steam, fuel, and graphite, and produced hydrogen gas, which exploded. The reactor had no containment building, which was standard with US reactors like the one at 3 Mile Island. The weak reactor walls failed to contain the explosion, and the core began to spew radiation into the environment. The USSR was finally forced to re-evaluate the safety of their plants.
Journalism in Russia was, and still is, one of the most dangerous jobs that one can choose. Journalists are often beaten, abducted, and told to stop reporting on any issues that go against the government. In the area of nuclear technology, the government hid 2 previous accidents in Leningrad and Belarus, and the Chernobyl accident was discovered when radiation was detected in Sweden. One man named Vladimir Shevchenko used his credentials to obtain access to the Chernobyl plant and document what was happening. However, as he was doing this, he did not realize the danger radiation posed to his body. As he traveled throughout the plant without a radiation suit, he later died from acute radiation poisoning, saying as he died that he only regretted the things he was not able to film at Chernobyl. A video published by Shevchenko before he died, titled "The Severed Days," remains the only first-hand account of the accident. It has never been aired on Russian television, due to the fact that it would shed a bad light on the USSR nuclear program.
As the Chernobyl plant spewed radiation, the radioactive cloud spread over continental Europe and Britain, carrying radioactive cesium and dust particulates, harmful to the populations of those areas. This radiation caused health problems across Europe and was addressed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, "The basic rights and freedoms to which all humans are entitled include the freedoms of civil, political, and social expression, and the right to health care." With the explosion and subsequent evacuation of the Gomel region, the Soviet government had managed to ignore many basic needs of the people. A blatant violation of the right to life and health, the Soviet government did not provide iodine tablets, which would have prevented almost all of the thyroid cancers that plagued the residents of the Gomel region. The most prevalent problem that faced the people, the fact that their thyroids would contract cancer that would eventually kill them, was completely ignored by the Soviet government, with the World Health Organization and Greenpeace putting the total deaths between 4 and 10,000 from thyroid cancer alone. However, even with the radiation that was affecting the surrounding people and environment, the Soviet government still continued to operate Chernobyl plants 1, 2, and 3. In the quest for cheap power and having a plant that still operated fairly well, the USSR ignored the pressing concerns of the radiation effects on their workers. If the accident had been similar to 3 Mile Island, where the radiation was contained, the plants could have been serviced safely. Unfortunately, Viktor Brukhanov, the construction director of the plant, was forced to meet an unrealistic deadline, and as he struggled under the demands of the government, he neglected to build the containment building, the most vital last chance safety measure. The containment building is composed of multiple feet of reinforced concrete in all US plants, and most of the Russian plants as well. Even the Fukushima plant had a large containment building, which stopped the reactor from fully contaminating the environment. However, the Chernobyl plant lacked this, and the building that housed the reactor proved to be no match for the destructive forces of a nuclear meltdown. As opposed to the modern Votkal plant in southern Georgia, which has walls of nearly 16 feet thick, the Chernobyl plant only has normal walls made of cinder block. Even now, nearly 28 years later, the Chernobyl reactor number 4 still simmers under a hastily built shelter known as the sarcophagus. The Russian government has plans to build a final shelter known as the new safe confinement, but is not to be completed until 2015.
The government continued to be negligent in the management of the various nuclear plants, building the city of Pripyat dangerously close to the Chernobyl plant and encouraging people to move there and live without informing them of the dangers of nuclear technology. Furthermore, after the plant had exploded and the disaster had begun, the Soviet government contributed to the death toll by not warning the firefighters and doctors who responded of the dangerous nuclear radiation. That action alone could have saved more than 40 lives. Instead, the firefighters charged directly into the reactor with no idea of the dangers it held. When they were finally informed, they were forced to leave behind machines and equipment, as it was now dangerously irradiated. Documented in the videos of Shevchenko, the Soviet government also brought in newly drafted soldiers. They were put to work shoveling sand and boron into the reactor. Many later died due to acute radiation poisoning and thyroid cancers. Yuri Andropov, a member of the KGB Security Council, wrote a report about the lack of safety in the plant, stating that major faults, such as not using reinforced concrete, led to the radiation being able to leak.
One man, an engineer at the plant, suffering from serious medical problems including hemophilia and radiation sickness, speaks about how the explosion affected his life.
The following night I was taken to Moscow by plane. Only 5 people survived from those who were on board. Then my family was evacuated with the entire city.
His story shows how the people also faced major relocation following the explosion, as they were removed from Pripyat, Murmansk, and the majority of the Gomel region. The Soviet government sought to save as many people as they could from the radiation permeating the environment, but many people saw that their lives would not be much better off living in the slums of Kiev, and so they decided to stay illegally. Because of this, they faced severe medical problems as they aged. A Russian doctor also stated that the people who were relocated faced relocation trauma, and many of the older people simply died from anguish.
The radiation emitted from the core also affected the environment, leading to the deaths of many trees in an area of contamination called the Red Forest. Furthermore, the radiation led to genetic defects in many types of birds and birth defects in many rare animals. The explosion also contributed to opposition to nuclear power, as people who had seen 3 Mile Island now realized the dangers nuclear power posed. In addition, construction of nuclear power plants was almost halted until the early 2000s. Although nuclear power is one of the cleanest ways to provide power to a mass group of people, the danger that it poses if not handled correctly has led to legislation against and a lack of support for new plants, such as the resolution passed by the Social Democratic Party which limited nuclear power in Germany directly after Chernobyl, and the Sierra Club, an environmental club that opposes nuclear energy. The Chernobyl disaster, in conjunction with the 3 Mile meltdown, led to long-term environmental harm as developing countries did not build nuclear plants, opting instead to build carbon-producing coal-fired plants. Ultimately, the Soviet government did the entire world a disservice, limiting the growth of nuclear technology, causing needless death, and contributing to the ruined lives of many.